The smoky amber glow of the chandelier over our mahogany dining table always made our crystal glasses look like liquid gold. That night, the light felt hotter, crueler, as if it had conspired with my father to sear the announcement into my memory. I was 22, still flush with the first sweet summer after college, still believing that hard work and loyalty could override birth order. My older brother, Camden, lounged in father's leather-backed chair at the head of the table, spinning a butter knife between his fingers like a drum major's baton. Mother, in her silk blouse with the pearl buttons, watched him with a fondness that sharpened the moment father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have made our decision," father said, folding his napkin with military precision. "Camden will assume the presidency of Whitaker & Sons effective immediately." The words floated for a full heartbeat before crashing over me. Whitaker & Sons, the handcrafted furniture company that had carried our surname across 3 states, was supposed to be my destiny too. I had spent childhood Saturdays in the sawdust-perfumed plant, running a curious hand along maple planks, memorizing dovetail joints, feeling as if the grain itself spoke a language only I understood. Camden, on the other hand, spent his weekends chasing lacrosse scores and daydreaming about wakeboarding. He could barely tell a tenon from a lathe. I set down my water glass because my fingers had begun to tremble. "Dad, you promised we'd discuss this after I finished the design apprenticeship." Camden threw me a lopsided grin, half pity, half triumph. "Callista, you'll still design. Just, under me." A storm roared behind my ribs, but I forced my voice to a calm I did not feel. Our clients respect artistry. They don't need another middle manager who can't distinguish ash from oak. Father's jaw tightened in a way that meant the conversation was over. Enough. Camden's leadership skills are exactly what the company needs in the digital age. He stood, signaling the meal's abrupt end and, apparently, my inheritance of dreams deferred. I excused myself, heels echoing through the marbled foyer like gunshots. When I reached the veranda, the July air greeted me with the scent of honeysuckle and the churn of cicadas. The night sky over Savannah held no sympathy, only the indifferent glitter of stars. That was the moment the first ember of defiance lit inside me. If Father couldn't see beyond tradition, I would build something they couldn't ignore. The next morning, I left before dawn, throwing 2 suitcases and my sketchpad into the back seat of my rust-red Jeep. The coastal highway unfurled like a ribbon toward Atlanta, where anonymity and possibility waited. I had $900 in my bank account, a half-finished portfolio, and a head full of plans too audacious to say aloud. I rented a windowless studio apartment above a Cuban bakery that smelled of guava pastries at 5 a.m. and fried plantains at noon. My first job was slinging espresso at a cafe near Georgia Tech. Between shifts, I absorbed lectures on industrial engineering from the back row, pretending I belonged there. I sketched ideas on wrinkled receipt paper, snippets of chair silhouettes, and modular shelving that could snap together like puzzle pieces. Modern, affordable, sustainable. Designs my father never would have greenlit. Some nights I cried into my coffee-stained apron, missing the rhythmic symphony of lathes back home. But each dawn I woke with that ember glowing brighter. 3 months slipped by before fate slipped a business card under my elbow. A customer in a dove-gray trench coat studied my receipt doodles and said, "Those joints are clean. You a furniture girl?" "I am," I replied too quickly. "Name's Genevieve Dupont," she said, her French accent lilting like a cello. "I source sustainable home goods for boutique hotels. If you can build what you sketch, call me." She left before I could conjugate a thank you, but her card was heavy, embossed, and it pulsed in my palm like a second heartbeat. I worked double shifts to afford lumber. The Atlanta salvage yard became my treasure cave. Discarded heart pine beams, century-old doors with stories etched into their knots. By December, I had fashioned a prototype chair in my apartment, glue drying inches from my pillow. I named it the Renegade. When I emailed Genevieve photos, her reply was a single line: "Can you produce 20 by Valentine's?" 20 chairs in 6 weeks. I had no space, no machinery, and no employees. But I had grit, a rented U-Haul, and the phone number of a retired craftsman named Mr. Booker, who owned a dusty workshop behind a gospel church. He agreed to weekend access in exchange for coffee and the promise that music students could watch me work. So began my nocturnal apprenticeship. I planed boards while choirs practiced scales, their voices threading through warped window panes like incense. I hammered, sanded, and stained until dawn pinkened the horizon. Calluses bloomed across my palms. Sawdust tangled in my curls. On Valentine's Eve, Genevieve arrived with a hotel van and inspected every dowel, every bevel, with surgeon-like scrutiny. Finally, she grinned. They'll love them in New Orleans. She handed me a check large enough to cover my back rent and something else. Hope. That night I leaned against the church door, cheeks streaked with walnut oil, and laughed until tears came. Orders multiplied. Boutique owners wanted the story as much as the chairs. The outcast daughter forging furniture in a church workshop. I slept fewer hours, but my soul felt fed for the first time since that brutal family dinner. Back home, Camden's reign at Whitaker & Sons produced tepid quarterly returns. I knew because Mother forwarded the glossy shareholder letters, her cursive notes begging me to support your brother's transition. I filed them in a shoebox labeled Motivation. My empire, though calling it that felt premature, needed a name. I chose Rowan and Root. Rowan, my middle name. Root, the promise that every piece had a story anchored in reclaimed wood. I registered the LLC on my 23rd birthday, sweetness cut with steel. The year blurred into a montage, sourcing decommissioned barn beams in Tennessee, pitching at maker fairs in Asheville, driving overnight to Chicago to stage Airbnbs. I learned QuickBooks at red lights and negotiated contracts during 2 a.m. oil changes. My social circle shrank to 2, Mr. Booker, who taught me patience, and Alex, the bakery's head barista, who brought protein bars when I forgot to eat. One humid June midnight, Booker locked up and said, "Child, this shop won't contain you much longer. Promise me you'll look for a real space." I promised, but leases in Atlanta looked like phone numbers. Still, I toured an old cotton mill on the Chattahoochee and felt my pulse sink to its creaking iron bones. The rent was impossible. I left empty-handed, but the vision lingered. A factory floor humming with saws, showrooms bathed in skylight, my logo stenciled across sliding warehouse doors. Camden called that August, voice brittle. "Cal, the new e-commerce platform tanked. Father's furious. He wants me to present a rescue plan next quarter." Quote. I pictured the boardroom, mahogany walls, my grandfather's portrait glowering, the same chandelier that had witnessed my humiliation. For a flash, I saw myself at the head of that table, blueprint in hand. The thought startled me and thrilled me. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said, and ended the call. But that night, I opened my laptop and dissected Whitaker & Sons' online store. Slow load times, clunky checkout, product photos that made masterpieces look pedestrian. My fingers itched to fix it. Old loyalty warred with new ambition. The next morning, Genevieve forwarded an invitation. Atlanta Economic Development Summit, pitch competition for innovative manufacturing. Winner receives $50,000 and mentorship. The summit was 3 weeks away. $50,000 could lease the cotton mill. Mentorship could scale operations. My palms tingled the way they did when rough lumber revealed its hidden grain. Preparing a pitch deck felt like carving furniture out of fog. I rewrote until dawn bled through blinds, rehearsed over the whir of box fans. Booker stood in for investors, throwing curveball questions while sanding tabletops. Alex timed my delivery between espresso pulls. The night before the summit, thunder rattled the city. Rain pierced the workshop roof in thin, needling streams. I draped tarps over inventory, heart banging like a drum. At 3 a.m., the power died. The lathe whined to a halt mid-revolution, and the board I'd been shaping splintered, cutting my forearm. Blood trickled across sawdust. I pressed a rag against the wound, dizzy with exhaustion and doubt. Maybe father had been right. Maybe leadership required pedigree I'd never earn. Lightning flashed, illuminating the tar paper patches on the ceiling. Patches I'd meant to fix but never had time. I sank to the floor, rain drumming overhead, and for the first time since leaving Savannah, I allowed myself to sob. The sound mingled with thunder, raw and unfiltered. But when the storm waned, a curious calm settled. I fetched a flashlight, bandaged my arm, and finished shaping the board by hand. Every turn of the spoke shave felt like a vow. I will not quit. The summit venue smelled of new carpet and ambition. Pitch teams ironed matching polo shirts. Consultants clutched sleek tablets. I arrived in jeans still smudged with walnut stain, a rolled blueprint under one arm, and a single renegade chair under the other. Backstage, I breathed in counts of 4 like Booker had taught. The auditorium lights dimmed. A moderator called. Next up, Rowan and Root, Sustainable Heritage Furniture for Modern Living, presented by Callista Whitaker. I stepped onto the polished stage, heartbeats sinking to the muted applause. 40 investors watched, pens poised. Father's voice echoed in my memory. Camden's leadership skills are exactly what the company needs. I straightened my shoulders. I opened with a story, the discarded heart pine beam reborn as a hotel showpiece. I spoke of carbon footprints avoided, artisans paid fair wages, customers hungry for pieces that mattered. I flipped slides showing growth curves shaped like rising suns. At minute 6, I unfolded the cotton mill vision, skylights spilling over rows of makers' benches. I ended by lifting the renegade chair, declaring, "When wood is given a second life, so are we." Silence. Then applause. First polite, then building until it filled the hall like wind in sails. I swallowed hard, blinking against stage glare, clutching the backrest as if it could anchor me. The judges whispered. The moderator returned, smiling. "Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. We'll announce finalists shortly." I rolled the chair off stage and sank against a curtain, lungs burning as if I'd sprinted miles. Minutes dragged. My phone buzzed with a Savannah area code. I almost declined, then answered. "Callista, it's Mother." Her voice quivered. "Something's happened at the plant." My blood chilled. "What do you mean?" "There was an accident. A fire in the finishing wing. Your father's in the hospital. Camden." She choked on the name. "He's missing." The world tilted. The moderator's voice boomed beyond the curtain. "And the 3 finalists are..." I clutched the phone, halfway between stage and exit. Ambition and blood. The audience applauded. My name might have been called. I couldn't tell over the roar in my ears. Mother sobbed, begging me to come home. I stared at the auditorium exit sign glowing red like a brand. SAVANNAH one way, Destiny the other. I took a breath and, "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow I have a special story for you." And my feet started moving before my mind caught up, sprinting toward the backstage exit like a bullet leaving the chamber. The rusted hinge shrieked protest, but I was already tearing down the corridor, Genevieve's shocked gasp chasing me like an echo. Outside, hot August air smacked my face. My Jeep was parked 4 blocks away. No time. I fished my phone from my pocket, thumb trembling over rideshare apps that took eons to load on the conference Wi-Fi. An old yellow cab idled by the curb, paint chipped, driver fiddling with a crossword. I yanked the door open. "Savannah Memorial Hospital," I gasped. 300 miles. I'll pay whatever's on the meter and triple tip if we break land speed records. The driver, silver mustache, baseball cap, eyed me like I'd suggested teleportation. But he shrugged. "Strap in." Minutes later, we were on I-75 South, Atlanta's skyline receding in the rearview. My phone rang again, this time an unrecognized number with a Midtown prefix. I ignored it, then regretted it, worried it might be Summit officials. But Mother's sobs replayed in my ears, drowning every rational thought. Lightning stitched the distant horizon. I leaned my forehead against the window, the cab's vinyl seat sticking to my sweat-soaked back. The dashboard clock ticked louder than the engine. I kept replaying the last conversation with Camden. Father's furious. He wants me to present a rescue plan next quarter. Rescue? From what? From Camden's own missteps? Had the fire started in production because of his cost-cutting? The possibility twisted my gut. 2 hours in, the cab's transmission whined on a steep grade. The driver muttered prayers in Spanish, but the car soldiered on. I offered him water and a granola bar from my backpack, silently thanking Alex for stuffing it there that morning. At 11:23 p.m., Savannah's moss-draped streets welcomed us with flickering gaslights. The hospital loomed ahead, sterile and formidable. I tossed bills at the driver. He tried refusing, but I pressed the wad into his palm, then bolted through sliding doors. The emergency ward smelled of disinfectant and desperation. I spotted Mother instantly, her blouse misbuttoned, mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. She collapsed against me. "Callista, thank God." "How's Dad?" My voice sounded alien. "Smoke inhalation. They're monitoring his lungs," she swallowed. "Third-degree burns on his hands." My mind flashed to his calloused fingers guiding a chisel, the smell of cedar. "And Camden?" She flinched. "Still missing." "Missing? He wasn't found at the site?" She shook her head. "The wing collapsed. They stopped search operations at dusk." Quote, "Firefighters working for years knew to halt when flames weakened beams. They'd resume at daylight. But storms were rolling in. Rain could hamper them or help cool the rubble. The uncertainty gnawed at me." A nurse approached, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Whitaker, your husband is asking for you." Mother dabbed her eyes and followed the nurse. I sank onto plastic chairs, adrenaline ebbing, leaving a hollow ache. My phone buzzed again. "Same Midtown number," I answered. "Ms. Whitaker, this is Harper Dunn from the Atlanta Economic Summit. Congratulations. Rowan and Root placed first. We need confirmation by noon tomorrow to secure your funding." Blood roared in my ears. Noon, less than 14 hours. My father lay burned, my brother may be dead. Atlanta might as well have been Mars. "My family's facing an emergency," I managed. "Is there any flexibility on the deadline?" "I'm so sorry," Harper said, voice soft but firm. "Sponsors fly in tomorrow afternoon. We must finalize paperwork by noon." I promised to try and ended the call, heart splitting along fault lines I hadn't known existed. Dawn seeped through hospital blinds when Mother and I were allowed into Father's room. He lay propped against pillows, skin sallow, oxygen tube hissing. His hands, swaddled in gauze, looked enormous. He blinked at me, tears welling. "Callista!" His voice rasped dry as parchment. I squeezed his elbow, avoiding the bandages. "I'm here." He closed his eyes, breaths shallow. Fire started, finishing varnish. Sprinklers, faulty. Guilty grief rippled across his features. I signed off on delayed maintenance. Too busy pushing digital. My anger melted into sorrow. He'd gambled safety to race modernization, pressured by declining numbers. "Camden?" he asked. "Rescue teams resume at sunrise," I whispered. "They'll find him." His eyelids fluttered. My fault, all of it. A tear slipped over his temple. I wanted to say it wasn't, but I couldn't lie. Instead, I said, "Rest. You need strength." Mother stood silent, one trembling hand on Father's shin. I caught her eye. "I'm going to the site." She nodded, fear and faith warring on her face. I kissed Father's forehead, then strode out. The plant lay 10 miles west, along the Ogeechee River. I borrowed Mother's sedan. The early sun cast long pink scars across the sky. As I neared the familiar property, smoke-tinged haze blurred the pines. Whitaker and Sons looked like a wounded creature. The finishing wing, once fragrant with lacquer, was a skeleton of bent girders and blackened brick. Firefighters milled about, reflective tape catching dawn. A perimeter tape barred entry, but I ducked under. Chief Elkins, whom I'd known since childhood, spotted me. "Callista, it's unstable." "I need to help find Camden." My voice dared him to refuse. He sighed, handing me a hard hat. "Stay close." We picked through charred rubble. The smell of wet ash clung to my lungs. I recalled Camden's laugh echoing off rafters when we were kids, racing forklifts. My throat tightened. An excavator lifted twisted beams. A firefighter shouted, "We've got a void," and everyone rushed. They pulled away debris, revealing a pocket where collapsed ductwork formed a crude shelter. Inside, a man lay motionless, soot-masked. "Camden!" I lunged, knees buckling. Medics dragged him onto a stretcher. Pulse, faint but present. Relief slammed me so hard I nearly vomited. As they wheeled him toward an ambulance, I clutched his hand. He mumbled, "Cal, sorry." Then his eyes rolled back and he slipped into unconsciousness. Hours later, both my father and brother occupied adjoining ICU rooms. Reporters thronged outside, hunger in their lenses. I hated that tragedy drew them like moths. Hospital administrators ushered Mother into a small conference room to discuss insurance. I joined. A claims officer, Mr. Keene, unfurled spreadsheets of liabilities. Preliminary estimate, $7 million in damages, Keene said. Your commercial policy covers $5 million, minus deductible. However, coverage may be affected by violation of fire safety codes, sprinkler maintenance deferred, etc. Mother's chin quivered. Deferred by whom? Keene hesitated. The signature authorizing postponement came from company president Camden Whitaker. Air evaporated from the room. The officer continued. If negligence is confirmed, the payout could be slashed. The company may face insolvency. My stomach plummeted. Insolvency? Hundreds of employees depended on those paychecks. Mother's gaze snapped to me, eyes wild with unspoken plea. Fix this. I paced the hallway, brain churning. Noon deadline loomed. $50,000 felt pitiful against $7 million, but the mentorship, the credibility, priceless, yet leaving now felt like betrayal. I called Booker. He answered gruff, mid-sawing. I explained everything, voice tight. He listened, then said, Callista, you built Rowan and Root with grit and prayer. Your family needs a leader who can resurrect more than buildings. Maybe it's you. I sank to the floor. They never wanted me to lead. Doesn't matter, he said. The world did. Booker offered to drive halfway to meet and swap vehicles. You can be at the summit by 11, sign the papers, and drive back by nightfall. My pulse quickened. Impossible, and yet maybe. I kissed Mother's cheek, promised I'd return before midnight. She nodded, trusting. Interstate asphalt blurred beneath Booker's battered pickup, the Renegade chair strapped in back, my lucky talisman. We met at a truck stop near Macon. Booker pressed coffee into my hands, squeezed my shoulder. Drive safe. The door you opened today might be wide enough for everyone. I barreled north, heart hammering 120 beats per minute, the deadline stalking each mile marker. Harper texted at 11:12. We've drafted the agreement. Need your signature on arrival. At 11:47, Atlanta's skyline reared up. I screeched into the conference center lot, lungs burning. Harper met me at security, paperwork in hand. I scrawled my name, ink blotching from shaking fingers. It's official, Harper said, handing me a folder. Welcome to the accelerator. Relief washed over me, but it was laced with fear. Now I had to stretch myself across two crumbling empires. Back on the road by 12:30, I called Mother. Funding secured. I'm coming back. Her exhale crackled through the earpiece. There's more, she whispered. Investigators found accelerants in the varnish room. They suspect foul play. I nearly swerved. You mean arson? Yes, her voice broke. They'll question everyone, especially Camden. I thought of his deferred maintenance, father's burned hands, the insurance clause. Could Camden have set fire to cover losses? No, my brother was reckless, not malicious, but someone could have exploited his negligence. A storm erupted, rain thrashing the windshield. I slowed, wipers frantic. Headlights revealed a figure on the shoulder waving flares. Trooper signaling detour. An overturned tanker had closed the highway. Alternate route adds 90 minutes, the trooper yelled through rain. 90 minutes I didn't have. I punched steering wheel leather. Then phone buzzed. Genevieve. I heard about the fire, she said. If production halts, my clients will demand refunds. I squeezed bridge of my nose. Give me 48 hours. I'll source temporary facilities. 48, or contracts void, she warned. Spinning plates cracked overhead. I breathed shallow to keep them aloft. The detour snaked along country roads lined with kudzu-choked trees. Dusk seeped purple. I glimpsed reflected lights behind State Patrol. I eased over. Maybe they warned of flooding ahead. The cruiser stopped. A lanky officer approached, rain dappling his brim. Evening, ma'am. Need to see license and registration. I handed them over, heartbeat steady. He studied my name. Whitaker. From the furniture family? Yes. He tilted his flashlight, scanning cab interior, lingering on the Rowan and Root folder. We've had reports of company documents stolen from the fire site. Mind if I look in the back? Stolen documents? Officer, I left the hospital hours ago. Just routine. He opened the truck bed, rummaged through tarps, then retrieved a sealed banker's box I'd forgotten. Father's legacy design archives Booker had saved years ago. He slit tape, flipped through charred blueprints. These match items on the missing list, he said. What? They're ours. Booker salvaged them long before the fire. He radioed code I didn't understand. Another cruiser arrived. My pulse spiked. Arrest? I tried explaining, but they led me to the cruiser, rain pelting my scalp. Ma'am, we need to clarify ownership at the station. Sirens blared. Cruiser pulled onto slick road. Through the mesh I watched my pickup recede, renegade chair forlorn in the rain. My empire, my family, balanced on a blade's edge, and now steel bars closed between us. The patrol car accelerated into darkness, taillights bleeding red across asphalt. In that moment I knew, someone wanted Whitaker and Sons, maybe even Rowan and Root, to burn. And I was the perfect scapegoat. I pressed my forehead to the smudged plexiglass divider as the cruiser hurtled through curtains of rain, pulse pounding harder than the windshield wipers. The term scapegoat rattled inside my skull like a loose screw in a whirring machine, sharp, metallic, impossible to ignore. I'd spent the last 2 years carving an identity out of salvaged timber and stubborn will, but in a breath, the narrative twisted. Daughter turned deserter, turned suspect. The cruiser's stale interior smelled of wet nylon and old coffee. Red and blue strobes painted the forested roadside in frantic color, a collage of urgency that matched my thoughts. The deputy in the passenger seat typed notes into a laptop. Every keystroke, another nail in a coffin I hadn't built. Meanwhile, the driver hummed off key to a gospel station, oblivious to the fact that Faith felt thin as rice paper tonight. I tried to slow my breathing, count to 5, in, hold, out, the way Mr. Booker taught me when grains of sawdust threatened to ignite tension headaches. But the technique faltered in the face of blinking cuffs on my wrists, their steel chilling my veins even through thin raincoat fabric. What documents are missing? Why blame me? Who filed the anonymous tip? The questions spiraled like shavings around a lathe, piling deep. The station resembled every municipal building I'd ever seen. Beige cinderblock walls, buzzing fluorescent tubes, the faint tang of bleach. They led me through a grimy corridor into an interview room with 2 metal chairs, a table, and a camera mounted in one corner, its red light already winking awake. Deputy Collins, the lanky trooper who'd pulled me over, uncuffed my wrists but left the door conspicuously ajar, a reminder that freedom teetered on a hinge. Recording, 22:11 hours, he announced to the camera, then slid into the opposite chair. Subject, Callista Rowan Whitaker. He read my rights in a monotone. I nodded but didn't utter a word. Speak less, listen more. Another Booker rule. Collins produced crime scene photos, mangled binder clips, charred folders, and a partially melted USB drive nestled in a Ziploc, each object labeled with evidence tags. Items cataloged as company intellectual property, he said, reported missing by Whitaker and Sons acting COO Mr. Lawrence Tyndall. Tyndall, father's longtime operations chief, pale, bespectacled, with a handshake like limp cardboard. He'd seemed nervous at holiday parties, always checking his watch. So he was the whistleblower? Or puppet master? These, Collins tapped the photos, were allegedly found under tarpaulin in the bed of your pickup. Allegedly, I echoed, forcing calm. Which means, you haven't confirmed they're the same documents. Collins suppressed a smirk. The burden's on forensics, but possession after theft is plenty. I laced my fingers. They aren't stolen. Mr. Booker, the retired craftsman, rescued a box of blueprints from warehouse archives years ago when the company renovated storage. The plant was discarding them. And he conveniently gave them to you tonight? Not tonight, I corrected. I stored them in the pickup months ago. We used them as design inspiration. Collins nodded, scribbling. So you admit relocation of company property? My patience cracked. You do realize my last name is Whitaker? My father owns those prints. They're family heirlooms, not corporate secrets. He raised a brow. Ownership gets murky when a multi-million-dollar firm bleeds liabilities. Blueprints could be collateral. I inhaled, letting his words settle. So they framed me as someone siphoning assets ahead of bankruptcy. Collins leaned forward, shadow slicing his cheek. Tell me your whereabouts at 1942 last night, time of the alleged arson. I was pitching in Atlanta, I said, surprised at the steadiness of my voice. Got witnesses? An auditorium of 400, plus video. He flipped a notebook, silently conceding, then his gaze hardened. What about motive? You bypassed a successor. You founded a rival. Perfect recipe for sabotage. The accusation stung but paralleled my own midnight doubts about Camden. People assumed ambition equaled villainy. I bristled. I spent 2 years carving a niche. Why torch my father's legacy? Why risk lives? The deputy shrugged, uninterested in philosophical nuance. Moments later, a female officer knocked. Collins, legal counsel's here. Collins glanced at me, surprised. You called an attorney? No, I answered, mind-whirring. The door opened to reveal a figure in a trench coat so precisely tailored it might have been sculpted. Genevieve Dupont. Raindrops jeweled her dark hair. Behind her towered a broad-shouldered man with an attaché case, evidently a lawyer. Genevieve's eyes flashed defiance. Ms. Whitaker's representation. All questions cease until we review charges. Collins pursed his lips. She wasn't formally charged. Then release her or charge her. We will not entertain fishing expeditions, the lawyer said, voice like granite. Collins grumbled, but procedure bound him. 15 minutes later, I walked into the lobby, clutching a plastic evidence bag containing my phone and keys. Wrists sore but free. Outside, dawn gloom lightened the parking lot. Genevieve slid into the passenger seat of her sedan as I collapsed behind the wheel. She fixed me with a look equal parts scold and concern. Merde, Callista, you select dramatic crises. Welcome to Georgia, I croaked, then winced at how brittle I sounded. Tears threatened but refused to fall. Dams built from adrenaline. Her lawyer, Mr. Fontaine, outlined bail paperwork while I drove back toward Savannah. They have nothing substantial, he assured. Still, Tyndall's statement carries weight. We need proactive strategy. We reached the hospital by mid-morning. Mother met us, eyes red corners. Camden regained consciousness briefly, but he's delirious. She led us to his ICU room. Machines beeped a syncopated rhythm. Camden's face, half hidden by oxygen mask, bore streaks of soot not fully scrubbed away. I squeezed his shoulder, his eyes fluttered open. Cal? His voice rasped. I'm here. His gaze, unfocused, darted corners of the room. I didn't check sprinklers, but the flames, they started too fast. I leaned closer. Did you see anyone? He swallowed, pupils dilating as if reliving terror. Shadow near the solvent drums, heard glass break, then whoosh. Shadow. Not helpful yet, but something. A nurse ushered us out. In the corridor, Fontaine asked, Any cameras in finishing wing? No, but there's backlot CCTV, I said. If the arsonist carried accelerants, maybe they crossed that zone. Genevieve's eyes narrowed. Timestamps? 2200 to 2205, I recalled from reports. She checked her watch. We'll retrieve footage. I squeezed her hand. I owe you. She smiled, thumbing a smear of soot from my cheek. You owe me flawless chairs. Focus. Lunch hour found me, Mother, and Fontaine in a hospital conference room with 2 suits from Affinity Assurance, the plant's insurer. A third attendee dialed in, voice only, an underwriter named Ms. Wilkes. They spoke in courteous daggers, citing clauses, exclusions, probable cause. I combated fatigue, mind-mapping arguments like joinery diagrams. Fontaine deflected blame, emphasizing deferred maintenance authorized by Camden, not deliberate arson, and contested any suspicion of insider sabotage. But Wilkes posed a question. How do you reconcile Ms. Whitaker's new venture with potential competitive incentive to diminish Whitaker and Sons' market share? The insinuation crackled, naked and sharp. Before Fontaine answered, I leaned toward the speakerphone. My venture rescues lumber scrap. Our audiences diverge. I pitched funding hours before the fire. Public fact. I sought synergy, not destruction. Check my emails. Silence followed, and for a heartbeat I feared I'd misplayed. Then Wilkes murmured, duly noted. Yet the seed of doubt remained. When the meeting ended, I sagged. Mother gripped my arms. You need rest. Quote, Not yet. I kissed her forehead. Keep me updated. Genevieve and I drove to the plant. Fire marshals allowed entry to the security office. The DVR unit, miraculously untouched, flickered grayscale images. An investigator cued footage around 21:45. We fast forward. Empty lot. Flicker of headlights. Raccoon scurrying. At 21:58, a silhouette emerged from a pickup outside camera center. Hooded, slender build, carrying 2 bulky containers. My stomach flipped. The figure moved with purpose to finishing wing side door. 22:03, they vanished inside. 22:07, blinding burst, camera snow, then nothing. I exhaled. Can we enhance the plates? The investigator paused. Angles poor, but we'll try. Genevieve tapped her lip. Pickup looks like late model Silverado, metallic green. Camden drives charcoal Tahoe, Tyndall drives Lexus, I said. Investigator nodded. We'll search DMV. Outside, cicadas screamed. Genevieve faced me. This footage clears you. If timestamp shows you were miles away. Relief rippled, but soon cooled. Clearing me didn't rescue workers' jobs, didn't heal father's hands. She placed a thumb drive in my palm. Copy for your lawyer. Back at ICU, I found father awake, burns bandaged like bulky mittens. He beckoned me to sit. A rasp. Heard what happened at Summit. Proud. Tears pricked my eyelids. I tried to speak, throat closed. He continued, Camden mistakes. But Lawrence, Tyndall, he's been pushing risky cost cuts. I ignored red flags. I leaned in, urgent. Dad, did Tyndall have authority to delay sprinkler maintenance? Camden signed. Tyndall drafted. He coughed. Check purchase orders last quarter. Solvent supply quadrupled. Didn't add up. The pattern formed like grain emerging under stain. Excess solvent could supply accelerant. Cost cuts, masked purchases. Fire wrote off liabilities. Insurance fallout pinned sabotage on heirs who left. I kissed father's forehead. Rest, I'll handle it. He squeezed my wrist. Callista, take the reins, save what's left. Evening draped Savannah in coral hues as board of directors convened via emergency teleconference. Fontaine and I sat in father's study at home, ancestral portraits judging from paneled walls. The board, 8 members, faces pixelated, listed agenda, appoint interim leadership, discuss insolvency, address criminal probe. Tyndall led, tie perfectly centered. Given current liabilities, I propose Chapter 11 to protect assets and restructure under new investment partnership. Translation, he'd buy cheap via Shellcorp. I bristled. One director asked, who steers during restructuring? Tyndall feigned reluctance. I'm prepared to assume duties. I unmuted. Point of order. My father, CEO, designated me acting president under Contingency Protocol 7C. I displayed scanned document father had signed earlier, witnessed by hospital notary. Tyndall's smile faltered. That protocol requires board consent. Fontaine leaned toward Mick. Consent defaults granted if majority objects not within 24 hours. And given urgency. Directors murmured. Some owed loyalty to father, others to profit. I presented Rowan and Root Accelerator package, mentorship, capital, expansion plan that could pivot Whitaker production lines to sustainable modules, diversifying revenue. A vote ensued, 5-3 in my favor. Tyndall's camera feed froze, either glitch or his fury manifesting. But he regained composure, his tone oily. Very well. Interim President Whitaker, First Order, address insurance shortfall by 0900 tomorrow, or creditors will seize inventory. He logged off. Fontaine rubbed temples. He'll sabotage you further. Let him try, I whispered, though my hands shook. We need to audit purchase orders now. The night bent toward dawn as Genevieve, Fontaine, and I pored over digital logs accessed via remote desktop. Supplier invoices bore Tyndall's electronic sign-off for barrels of methylated spirits far surpassing finishing needs. Dates aligned with maintenance delays. Motive: torch the wing, blame deferred sprinklers, collect insurance. But my sudden success and Camden's negligence offered scapegoats. I compiled a dossier, emailed to Fire Marshal Elkins and Detective Collins, subject: evidence of premeditated arson, Lawrence Tyndall. At 4:37, Collins replied, received. Meeting ATF at 0700. I allowed myself 10 minutes sleep on study couch, waking disoriented to Genevieve shaking my shoulder. Time to move, mon ami. Morning sunlight sliced through oak branches when we arrived at the cotton mill I'd dreamed of. The landlord, Ms. Ramirez, met us with keys and a ledger. $50,000 check in hand. I signed a 6-month lease with option to buy. Ramirez extended her hand, calloused from years of running a farm before real estate pivot. Make her live again, she said, voice thick with pride. Inside, dust motes waltzed under skylights. The mill smelled of history. Linseed oil and iron. I envisioned benches. CNC routers powered by renewable energy. Apprentices learning dovetail basics at communal tables. An empire not of bloodline but of purpose. But my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, expecting more fires. Instead, a calm voice. Ms. Whitaker, this is Special Agent Rivera, ATF. We've detained Mr. Tyndall for questioning, but he claims you conspired to benefit Rowan and Root. We need you downtown for statement. Of course, Tyndall would not burn alone. I sighed. I'll be there within the hour. Genevieve listened as I relayed. He lengthens the chessboard, she said. Time to reveal footage. I nodded. And we need Camden's memory before Tyndall manipulates him. On the way to ATF field office, rain returned, July's mercurial temperament. Genevieve drove while I rehearsed facts. We parked, splashed through puddles. Inside, Rivera, a woman with hawk-sharp eyes, met us. She displayed still frames from security footage. Plate trace returns to truck registered to Low Country Solvents, supplier tied to Tyndall's shell company. Relief unfurled in my chest. Rivera said, we'll investigate financials. Meanwhile, Tyndall made bail. Corporate account. He's free until arraignment. Genevieve cursed, in French. I met Rivera's eyes. Keep him away from my family. I'll try, she said, but bureaucracy had limits. Back at hospital, I found Camden awake again, his eyes glassy but lucid. Fontaine stood by, phone recording statement, legal evidence. Camden recounted seeing Tyndall in the wing hours before fire, arguing with a contractor about safety checks. He also recalled Tyndall bribing him with tickets to a lacrosse final if he'd sign maintenance delay forms. My gut clenched. Camden looked at me, shame-pooling. I'm sorry, Cal. I thought it was harmless. I squeezed his hand. We'll fix it together. But moments later, alarms shrilled. Camden's vitals spiked. Nurses ushered us out. Through glass, I watched them stabilize him. Fear, hot and immediate, flooded my veins. Mother arrived, eyes pleading. He can't take more stress. I'll protect him, I vowed. Evening found me at the cotton mill, converting vow into blueprint. I'd summoned 10 displaced Whitaker craftsmen via group text. Men and women whose livelihoods now tittered. They arrived with tool belts and cautious hope. I climbed a stack of pallets. Rowan and Root is open for second chances. This mill becomes our sanctuary. We'll fulfill existing hotel orders and spin up a new line. Rebirth collection. Pieces honoring the plant and your craftsmanship. Murmurs turned to applause. I felt tears threaten again, but this time they tasted of fierce joy. We divided tasks, marking space for benches, sanding stations, finish room. Generator hummed to life, spilling warm light across brick walls for the first time in decades. As night deepened, I went to storage closet seeking extension cords. The hallway smelled faintly of gasoline. Odd. I followed scent to a far corner. 2 red cans sat beside breaker panel, caps loosened. My throat tightened. Footsteps behind. I spun. A silhouette blocked the exit. Broad shoulders, rain jacket dripping. Looking for these? His voice was smooth, familiar. Tyndall. He stepped closer, pistol in hand, muzzle reflecting fluorescence. I admire your resilience, Callista, but you overplayed. My pulse hammered. ATF already linked the truck to your shell company. Walk away before this worsens. He laughed, low. Evidence can evaporate, especially in a nice, accidental blaze. I glanced at sprinkler heads. Functional? Uncertain. My mind raced. Nearby, a bundle of chestnut planks leaned against wall. If I could tip them. He saw my eyes dart. Don't. He cocked the hammer. Turn around. I raised hands, stepping backward until cold brick pressed my spine, heart pounding so hard my ribs ached. Insurance on this place would feed me for years, he sneered. And with you inside, suspicion circles back to your empire. Poetic, no? His finger tensed on trigger. I searched for any tool, a clamp, screwdriver, within reach, but shadows hid possibilities. Thunder boomed outside, rattling panes. Rain hammered tin roof. A gust of wind blew door ajar, making fluorescent bulbs flicker. One sputtered out, plunging corridor into half-dark. Tyndall swore, distracted. In that instant, I kicked the nearest gas can, sending it rolling. He swung pistol instinctively. I seized the chance. Grabbing a long-handled push broom, I jabbed the bristles into his wrist. The gun clattered, skidding across concrete. Tyndall lurched, grabbing my arm. Pain flared as his nails bit skin. I wrenched free, but he slammed me against breaker panel. Sparks flew. The room plunged into pitch darkness. Outside, thunder drowned our ragged breaths. I groped across floor for weapon. My fingers brushed cold steel, the pistol. But Tyndall yanked my hair, pulling me back. I lashed out blindly, elbow finding rib. He grunted. Suddenly, an alarm shrieked. The newly wired security system Genevieve insisted we install. Strobing red lights pulsed. Over the siren, I heard distant shouts. Craftsmen returning. Tyndall cursed, retreating footsteps pounding wood catwalk. I scrambled to my knees, adrenaline surging. Strobe froze scene every half second, like snapshots. Overturned gas cans, shimmering puddles, emergency lights, glowing exit signs. I grabbed pistol, flipped safety instinctively, though I'd never fired a handgun. My hands shook uncontrollably. Siren volume rose. Somewhere a door slammed. Then silence. Alarm cut off. The mill's generator died, plunging building into absolute black. And in that suffocating void, a single metallic click echoed. The pistol's hammer snapping back. But it wasn't mine. Tyndall had found another weapon. I held my breath, listening to his voice slither through darkness. Game's over, Callista. The floor creaked closer. My fingers tightened on pistol grip as sweat blurred sense of direction. Lightning forked outside, illuminating windows, and in that flash I glimpsed him 10 feet away, revolver raised. I prayed the security team had already dispatched police. But right now, all that mattered was stalling. I'll sign anything, I lied, voice trembling with calculated fear. Put the gun down, we'll walk out, blame faulty wiring, you'll still profit. He laughed, bitter. You underestimate how many bridges I burned. Only ashes left. His silhouette advanced. I retreated until back met stack of pallets. No further retreat. My thumb found pistol safety, flicked it off. My father's voice echoed. Steady hands, make clean cuts. I aligned barrel toward where I expected his chest. A noise behind me. Door burst open. Flashlights, workers shouting. Tyndall spun toward them. I fired instinctively. Deafening crack, recoil jarring, flashlights clattered. Tyndall screamed, dropping revolver. But he lunged at me, even wounded. We crashed against pallets. Lumber toppled, burying us. Pain exploded in my shoulder. Flames. A container had split, gas fumes ignited by sparks from breaker panel. Orange tongues licked spilled solvent, racing across floor. Chaos erupted. Craftsmen dragged boards, pulling me free. Tyndall lay crushed under beam, unconscious, leg trapped. Smoke billowed. We stumbled toward exit. Outside, rain-sheeted, extinguishing embers on our clothes. Sirens neared, fire department and sheriff both. I sagged against railing, lungs searing. Genevieve appeared, drenched, eyes wide. She hugged me fiercely. Behind her, red lights strobed. Paramedics stormed inside. Police cuffed semi-conscious Tyndall to stretcher. Agent Rivera arrived, nodding grimly. Rain washed blood from my brow. I looked at Mill, walls still standing but scarred. I'd saved the building, but at what cost? And what of the empire I now ran? 2 empires, interwoven. Could they withstand this blow? Rivera approached. You're safe, Ms. Whitaker. We have enough evidence now. Safe. The word felt fragile. I glanced at pistol still in my white-knuckled grip. Rivera gently took it, logging chain of custody. Genevieve led me toward ambulance, insisting on exam. I resisted, but vision swam. As EMT wrapped my arm, a deputy's radio crackled. Be advised. Additional suspect apprehended. Contractor named Yeager. Confessed to planting accelerants at Tyndall's request. I closed my eyes, relief heavy as lead. But then my phone buzzed. Hospital number, I answered, heartbeat stuttering. Mother's voice trembled. Callista, your father just went into cardiac arrest. The world narrowed to that single sentence, colder than the rain. Is he? They're trying to revive him, she sobbed. My knees buckled. EMT caught me. Sirens wailed, competing with thunder. I whispered into phone, Hold on, Dad. No response. Just mother's sobs and code blues echoing. I'd survived fire, bullets, betrayal, but the one battle I couldn't fight awaited in sterile halls miles away. Rain drowned the mill, extinguishing residual flames while beacons flickered red and blue. And as dawn hinted beyond storm clouds, I braced for what I might find on that ICU floor. Whether the heart of our family still beat, or whether I must steer 2 empires alone. Alone, I rode in the back of the deputy's SUV as it barreled down rain-slicked streets toward Savannah Memorial, blue strobes tearing across the night like ragged breaths. Genevieve followed close behind, her headlights a pale guardian. Fire-soaked clothing clung to my skin, blood from the grazed bullet mixing with gasoline and ash until pain blurred into background static. Only 4 words mattered. Cardiac arrest. Revive him. My mind replayed Father's trembling directive in the ICU, take the reins, while simultaneously flashing on Tyndall's pistol, the crack of my own shot, Camden's apology, the hiss of flames. Those memories overlapped like misaligned film reels, each frame washing the next in lurid color. If I lost Father now, would those words become a benediction or an unfinished plea? The question cut deeper than any graze. The SUV fishtailed into the emergency bay. I stumbled out, legs jelly, vision tunneling. Fluorescent lights seared my pupils as I sprinted inside, past security guards who'd already flagged my ID, through automatic doors that parted like the jaws of some indifferent beast. The ICU waiting lounge smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, mother paste, cheeks hollow, rosary beads threading through trembling fingers. Alex, the head barista who'd become my unlikely anchor, was there too, still in flour-dusted apron, having driven 5 hours after seeing news of the mill incident. His presence sent a ripple of calm through the chaos. But calm shattered when a cardiologist emerged, face the color of unvarnished maple. Mrs. Whitaker? He asked gently. We gathered around. Your husband suffered an arrhythmic storm. We performed cardioversion and inserted an intra-aortic balloon pump to stabilize perfusion. He's alive, in a medically induced coma to rest his heart. Mother's knees buckled. Alex and I caught her. Relief flooded my limbs, leaving me limp. Yet coma meant uncertainties. How long? What lasting damage? The doctor continued. Minimal burn infections so far, but we're monitoring for sepsis. Next 48 hours are critical. 48 hours. That same window Genevieve had granted for hotel deliveries. The same timeline creditors had demanded operating capital. Life's cruel sense of symmetry would have amused Father. Right now it terrified me. We were allowed into the room 2 at a time. Machines beeped in a rhythmic choir. Father's face looked smaller against sterile pillows, tubes like invasive vines. I squeezed his bandaged hand. Still warm, still mine. Tears finally slipped free, silent streaks cutting soot from my cheeks. I whispered promises that I would save Camden, shield Mother, rebuild the plant. That I'd turn Rowan and Root into a lifeboat wide enough for every displaced worker. Promises heavier than oak, yet somehow buoyant because saying them here made them sacred. Behind me, Alex lingered near the doorway, giving privacy. When I stepped out, he handed me a lukewarm coffee. "You need sugar," he said. "Your voice shakes." I managed a ghost of a smile. "Thanks for coming." He shrugged. "Couldn't watch the live stream of your nightmare without showing up." His hazel eyes held earnest worry that warmed me more than the coffee. Dawn streaked the windows rose gold when Agent Rivera called. Tyndall, treated for a shattered tibia, had posted a second bail via offshore guarantor. She warned vigilance. Fontaine forwarded a restraining order petition, but judges slept at 5 a.m. Legal shields would lag behind malevolent intent. Genevieve corralled me into a corner. "We still owe DuPont Hospitality 35 pieces by Monday. Mill is crime scene. Where do we craft?" Inspiration struck. The barn behind my late grandfather's river cottage. Abandoned for decades but structurally sound. I still had keys. The property remained in family trust. It wasn't wired for heavy machinery, but hand tools and battery packs would do. Old-school crafting might even elevate the collection's lore. "I'll gather artisans," I said. "You handle logistics." She clasped my shoulder. "You bleed purpose, Callista. Let us transfuse some back." By mid-morning, I convened an emergency town hall in the hospital cafeteria. 30 former Whitaker and Sons employees attended. Engineers, finishers, apprentices. Some still smelling of smoke. I stood atop a chair, voice amplified by adrenaline. Rowan and Root was always meant to honor heritage while forging tomorrow, I began. Today, that mission widens. We will rescue Whitaker craftsmanship, save livelihoods, and prove that what tried to kill us will make us unstoppable. Eyes glistened, chins lifted. I outlined the plan. Convert the river barn into a pop-up workshop. Finish the hotel order. Use the accelerator funds to purchase CNC routers once the mill reopened. Then pitch a crowdsourced pre-order campaign, #BuildWithRoot, to finance payroll. Alex volunteered bakery vans for transport. Mr. Booker, arm and sling from the night's chaos, pledged to oversee quality. We broke into teams. Optimism buzzed louder than cafeteria refrigeration. But optimism courted enemies. That afternoon, a push notification lit phones. Whitaker arson scandal widens. Daughter accused, bail granted to insider. The accompanying article rehashed Collins's early suspicions, downplayed Tyndall's arrest, and quoted an anonymous family source, stating Rowan and Root benefited from tragedy. Comment sections erupted, hashtags, #WhitakerFire and #RowanLoot trending within hours. Genevieve slammed her laptop shut. Public sentiment could kill hotel contract. I bit my lip until blood bloomed. We fight narrative with truth. We recorded a raw video from Father's bedside. Mother, Camden, now stable but hoarse, and me, Camden, voice cracking, admitted his negligence, exonerated me, and begged viewers not to punish workers for management sins. We uploaded it across platforms, tagging local news. Within 2 hours, the tide shifted, #StandWithRowan trending, donations pouring into a freshly created relief fund. Yet digital victories didn't satisfy bankers. At 5 p.m., Sharpstone Credit yanked Whitaker & Sons credit line. Supplies for employees' severance and plant cleanup froze. Fontaine's voicemail pinged. Board convening emergency vote to liquidate. Liquidate, sell machinery for scrap, intellectual property to highest bidder, pensions dissolved. I felt the edges of panic-fray composure. But crisis had become familiar terrain. Fear was now an old acquaintance. Nightfall found us caravanning to the river cottage. Fireflies dotted trees like errant sparks, a gentler echo of last night's inferno. The barn loomed, slate roof sagging, but walls straight. We hung flood lamps powered by generators, swept 10 years of cobwebs, and by midnight hammers tapped dovetails into reclaimed maple. The rhythmic rasp of handplanes mingled with crickets, music of resilience. Alex brewed coffee in grandmother's enamel percolator. Its scent merged with cedar shavings, creating an aroma that felt like the opposite of smoke. Creation, not destruction. I worked alongside artisans, muscles aching, wound at shoulder pulling each time I reached for clamps. Booker intercepted my tools, forcing breaks. Leader who collapses becomes new liability, he chided. I grinned through exhaustion, noted. At dawn, we loaded the first finished set into vans, destined for DuPont Hospitality's staging warehouse across town. Genevieve rode shotgun, paperwork ready. She texted 10 heart emojis when the foreman signed delivery receipts without hesitation. 1 milestone down. But bigger dragons waited. The board meeting scheduled for high noon in Whitaker's temporary corporate office, a rented suite near the devastated plant. They would vote on liquidation or survival. I drafted a counterproposal. Merge Whitaker and Sons under the Rowan and Root umbrella. Fund rehab through the Accelerator Grant, relief donations and pre-orders. Rehire workforce within 90 days. Convert production to sustainable lines. Fontaine prepped legal language. Mother gathered father's power of attorney for emergency share transfer. The plan hinged on 2 swing votes. Ms. Liang, a longtime family ally, and Dr. Hatch, a venture capitalist with 0 sentimental attachments. I dressed in navy blazers, still smelling faintly of smoke, hair pulled back to mask singed ends. Alex pinned a silver plain shavings lapel clip he'd forged from scrap, our improvised company emblem. You look like you could sand the devil's coffin, he teased. Let's hope I only have to sandboard egos, I said, but nerves fluttered hummingbird fast. Outside the boardroom, reporters clustered. I ignored them, pushing through walnut doors into sterile corporate chic. Tyndall, on crutches and sporting a knee brace, already sat at the table, lawyer at his elbow. He smirked slightly crooked where palate had cracked a tooth. Ms. Liang and Dr. Hatch joined via video call, screens flickering overhead. 4 other directors spaced along polished mahogany, faces inscrutable. Fontaine occupied a corner seat, briefcase like a shield. Tyndall opened, voice oily. Colleagues, as acting COO, I recommend asset liquidation to satisfy creditors before bankruptcy court dictates harsher terms. Our brand equity survives in licensing deals. He projected spreadsheets, grim numbers in crimson, gasps from some directors. I rose. Our heritage is not a logo to pawn. I present a restructuring plan that keeps craftsmen employed, repays creditors, and positions us at forefront of green manufacturing. I dropped files at each seat, then connected laptop to projector. Slides rolled, footage of barn workshop humming, testimonials from artisans, graphs of pre-orders surging post-campaign, letters of intent from environmental boutique chains. Final slide, a rendering of refurbished cotton mill buzzing with solar panels and skylights. Dr. Hatch leaned into camera. Ambitious. Capital requirements? Quote. I enumerated. Accelerator funds, community donations, state green tech grants, plus equity conversion of my own Rowan and Root shares. Ms. Liang smiled faintly. And leadership? I'll serve as CEO of merged entity for $1 salary until profitability. Murmurs. I held gaze steady. Tyndall banged cane. You expect board to ignore criminal allegations? Fontaine rose, projecting security footage of Silverado, arsonist silhouette, and supplier invoices linking to Tyndall. Gasps again. Hatch's eyebrows soared. Tyndall's lawyer objected, but Fontaine cited evidentiary chain. Directors whispered furiously. I turned to Tyndall. Step aside or face formal shareholder suit for breach of fiduciary duty. His nostrils flared. You think you've cornered me? He tapped remote. New slide appeared. An affidavit signed by Camden, time-stamped 2 hours ago, stating I urged him to delay maintenance to, quote, create marketing drama. Shockwave sliced room. My heart crashed. The signature looked authentic. Camden? Betrayal or coercion? Tyndall leaned in. The board must weigh conflicting accusations. Vote prudently. My knees wobbled, but I locked them. That statement is coerced. Camden is on morphine. Ms. Liang hesitated. We need verification. Dr. Hatch glanced at phone. I moved to table vote until verification. But Tyndall pressed. Creditors seize in 24 hours. Delay equals death. Chairman Barlow, oldest director, sighed. Then we vote now. Votes tallied quickly. 3 in favor of liquidation, Tyndall's block. 3 for my plan, tie. Chairman held deciding vote. Looked torn. Suddenly, boardroom doors flung open. Camden, pale, gown under trench coat, IV port taped, hobbled in, supported by Alex and a nurse. Gasps erupted. Tears glistened in his eyes. I rescind that affidavit. Lawrence threatened nurses to sneak Doc into my room. Cal never suggested delaying sprinklers. I did, out of laziness. He handed new signed statement to chairman. Vote for her plan. Tyndall sputtered, lunged forward, but deputies emerged, cuffs ready. Chair declared tie broken, restructure approved pending legal formalities. Relief swept me, knees buckling. Yet as deputies led Tyndall away, he sneered. Enjoy your kingdom of sawdust, Whitaker. Those solvent barrels weren't the last fuse I lit. I stiffened. What does that mean? He laughed, eyes gleaming. Check the river, you'll see. Deputies dragged him out. Alarm chilled blood. I dashed to window overlooking parking lot. Smoke curled over treetops beyond property, near River Cottage direction. My phone buzzed. Genevieve screaming. Callista! Barns on fire. Workers evacuated, but order inventories inside. The floor pitched. I grabbed car keys, sprinting. Alex followed. Behind us, boardroom erupted in chaos. But I had one focus. The barn held orders due at sunrise and livelihoods tied to them. If we lost that, restructure imploded. Engine roared as we sped toward Country Road, sirens dopplering behind. I prayed firefighters reached barn first, prayed gas leaks hadn't turned it into furnace. My hands on wheel shook. Tree-lined curves blurred. Through windshield, I saw orange glow staining clouds. Alex whispered, Hold on. The next bend revealed the barn fully engulfed, flames painting river in gold, silhouettes of artisans huddled on bank. But as we skidded to halt, Booker limped toward us, eyes blazing, not with sorrow but fierce triumph. We saved the order, he shouted over roar. Then he pointed to box trucks across meadow, his emergency evacuation plan executed minutes before ignition. Relief flooded. But another scream split night. One of the artisans pointing upriver where plume of black smoke rose not from barn, but from fuel-slick water near the dock. Fire spread across surface, heading toward century-old cypress grove that shielded gas mains for surrounding cottages. If flames reached tanks, explosion could level half the valley, and with it, every second chance we'd fought for. I sprinted toward Doc, feeling heat intensify. Alex chased me, shouting. In flicker dance of inferno, I spotted 2 overturned drums bobbing, leaking fuel. Ignition source, Tyndall's final fuse. Volunteer firefighters hadn't arrived. River's current pushed flaming slick toward gas mains, faster than help could come. Only one slim opportunity. Open sluice gate at old flood control lock upstream. Flush water volume to push flames back and dilute fuel. But gate was rusted, manual wheels stiff, took 2 people to crank. Alex grabbed my hand. We can do it. We raced along Levee Trail, embers raining. Wheelhouse loomed, iron gear rising like rusted moon. We braced on spokes, muscles screaming, shoulder wound tearing anew. Gear budged a quarter turn, groaned, stuck. Flames licked closer to gas mains. Wood supports began to smoke. Sweat blurred vision. Alex shouted count. 1, 2, heave! We threw weight. Gear jolted, then spun free with shriek. Water thundered, lock gates yawning. A surge roared downstream, slamming into fire slick. Steam hissed, flames sputtered, retreated. But surge also undermined levee footing. Earth quaked beneath us. A chunk of embankment sheared away. Wheelhouse trembled. I lost balance, slipped. Alex grabbed my wrist, but mud gave way. I plunged, icy current shocking lungs. The wheelhouse collapsed, iron beams crashing around. Underwater darkness swallowed everything, turbulence dragging me, pain seared lungs. I kicked toward rippling moonlight but collided with debris. Panic clawed. Then strong arms encircled me. Alex, pulling upward. We broke surface gasping, among broken planks. Fire still glimmered on distant slick, but dying. Sirens neared. Yet current swept us toward fallen cypress snags. I latched onto trunk, coughing river water. Exhaustion buckled limbs. I couldn't haul myself over log. Alex clung beside, breath ragged. We drifted past barn remains, toward jagged rocks near old mill ruins where rapids formed. Shouts echoed from shoreline. Booker? Firefighters? Too distant. Rapids roared ahead like a hungry throat. I tried swimming sideways but clothing heavy. Wound throbbed. Current outran strength. Alex looked into my eyes, unsaid apology or vow, before water spun us into white froth. I slammed against rock, pain blooming. World pinwheeled, dark sky, blazing remnants, moon, then churning void as river swallowed us whole. The last thing I felt was Alex's fingers sliding from mine, the current tearing him away. And then there was only roaring darkness, and the stark realization that saving two empires might cost the only person who'd held me afloat. Afloat. That single stubborn word echoed in the dark current as I clawed upward, lungs burning, throat filling with river mud bitterness. Afloat. Just keep something. Anything. Above water. A knee, a thought, a future. The torrent spun me like driftwood around the snagged cypress branches until my shoulders screamed. Somewhere in the black froth, I glimpsed Alex's silhouette. Head submerging, then bobbing back, eyes wide with a shock I felt mirrored in my own. We slammed into a half-submerged log, the impact jarring my teeth together. I hooked an arm over the slick bark. Alex collided beside me, gasping. Rain hammered the river's surface, each drop a needle. Farther downstream, firelight dimmed. Our emergency sluice flood had done its work. But now rapids dragged us toward the old spillway, where broken iron teeth from an abandoned turbine waited to chew anything unfortunate enough to reach them. Kick left. Eddie behind the rock, I shouted, voice raw. We pushed into swirling water, muscles heavy as lead. My wounded shoulder throbbed, but adrenaline overruled pain. Centimeter by agonizing centimeter, we inched behind a moss-covered granite boulder. Current slackened, allowing us to gasp precious air. Alex coughed violently. You? Okay? I nodded, though tremors betrayed me. We need shore. Branches overhung low. I reached for a willow root, fingers slipping twice before catching. Alex braced under me, boosting my foot onto a knot. The bank was a steep clay wall, but desperation granted purchase. I hauled myself onto mud, then grabbed Alex's wrist, heaving until he collapsed beside me, chest heaving. We lay there, rain mixing with tears I couldn't decipher. Fear, relief, gratitude. Sirens faded behind treeline. Firefighters had probably redirected once flames extinguished. For now, we were two soaked souls alone under storm-shattered stars. I rolled onto my side, vision spinning. We can't stay. Hypothermia. Alex managed a nod, then grimaced. A jagged gash opened along his calf, bleeding through drenched jeans. Adrenaline had masked it, now pain surfaced. We need pressure, I said, ripping my blazer sleeve into a strip. He winced as I tied the improvised tourniquet. Rain washed blood away as fast as it seeped. Nearby, the barn's skeletal remains glowed embers. But the box trucks Booker had pre-staged were intact up on the meadow rise, silhouettes bathed in flashing emergency lights. Workers gathered there under tarps, searching Riverside with flashlights. I cupped hands, shouting hoarsely. Beams converged. Moments later, Booker and two artisans slid down bank, ropes in hand. They wrapped us in quilts, guided us up slope. My legs threatened mutiny with every step, but the vision of unfinished hotel pieces waiting inside those trucks propelled me. Paramedics arrived, coaxed us into ambulances for hypothermia treatment. I tried protesting. Deliveries due at dawn, board meeting tasks, yet the world tilted, and protesting turned into retching river water onto rubber floor mats. In ER, warm IV fluids seeped into veins. Nurses cleaned Alex's leg, stitched the jagged wound. He squeezed my fingers through the procedure, his brown curls plastered to forehead. Despite pain meds, he whispered, "Still better than a 12-hour shift over a busted espresso machine." I laughed, a watery sputter, marveling at his gallows humor. After x-rays confirmed no fractures, doctors released us into the bruised pink of early morning. Booker waited with dry clothes plucked from hospital lost and found, and mother's sedan, she had insisted from ICU, refusing to leave father. I changed in restroom, noting new splotches of yellow bruise blooming across ribs. Sunrise crested the river valley as we drove toward DuPont Hospitality's downtown showroom, our final pre-delivery check. Genevieve met us outside, immaculate despite 36 sleepless hours, eyes bloodshot but determined. "We saved all 35 pieces," she declared. "Inspection in 2 hours." Seeing our battered state, she hesitated. I waved off concern. "Let's do this." Inside, the renegade chairs and rebirth tables stood aligned like a regiment, walnut grain shimmering beneath halogen beams. The sight nearly buckled my knees. Not just furniture. Proof that catastrophe could birth beauty. Genevieve guided hotel procurement reps through each piece, narrating reclaimed lineage. A conference table built from fallen cypress salvaged after Hurricane Ophelia. Bar stools shaped from century-old church pews. I chimed in when asked about joinery tolerances, heart soaring as inspectors nodded appreciatively. Finally, the team lead closed her binder, smiled. "Delivery accepted. Payment issued today." Genevieve discreetly pumped her fist. I sagged against a crate, tears threatening. We returned to hospital bearing good news, but celebration truncated instantly. Father remained comatose, heart supported by machines. Camden faced surgery to stabilize rib fractures, and Tyndall's cronies still hovered beyond legal reach. Agent Rivera briefed me near the vending machines. We searched Tyndall's storage unit, found forged maintenance logs and burner phones. Fingerprints match a warehouse temp, Corey Yeager, the contractor you saw. "Charged?" He flipped, naming Tyndall as mastermind. "Trial likely," she said. I should have felt relief. Instead, fatigue sagged my bones, battles yet to fight, creditors, public trust, production restart. Rivera softened. "Your courage last night saved lives." Courage felt accidental. I clutched coffee cup, noticing tremor in hand. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Times. 2 days later, courtroom hearing formalized my CEO appointment, ratified restructure, and froze Tyndall's voting shares pending trial. Outside courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones thrust, questions fired. Did you shoot to kill? Any regrets about leaving family business initially? Will Whitaker workers receive full wages during rebuild? I answered measuredly, emphasizing transparency and worker-first vision. Yet, lurking in crowd, I spotted a familiar face. Harper Dunn from the Accelerator, smiling reassurance. Her presence reminded me not all eyes sought scandal. That afternoon, Father's condition stabilized enough to reduce sedation. I sat at his bedside, reading ledger entries aloud, positive pre-sales, donation tallies, to coax him back with hopeful numbers. His eyelids fluttered, but consciousness remained elusive. Mother dozed in corner, rosary slack. I brushed stray hair from Father's brow. "I need you to wake up and see the empire you inspired," I whispered. A single tear slid from his closed eye, searing hope into my heart. Construction crews cleared charred finishing wing, while volunteers scrubbed soot from surviving equipment. Local news aired segments hailing community resilience. #BuildWithRoot surpassed 1 million views. Donations peaked, enough to cover 3 months' payroll. We relocated the portable workshop and surviving machinery into an unused hangar at Regional Airport. Cheaper lease, high ceilings. The cotton mill remained crime scene, but hangar sufficed to fulfill influx of custom orders. Alex, on crutches but refusing downtime, reconfigured layout for efficient workflow, applying cafe barista choreography to production lines. Watching him direct artisans from whiteboard warmed something deeper than gratitude inside me. One evening, we stepped outside for fresh air, leaning against fuselage of a retired C-47 cargo plane, sunset painted rivets gold. "I've been offered district trainer role for roastology," he said quietly, "but I'd rather stay if you'll have me." My pulse skipped. "I can't pay corporate salary yet." He grinned. "I'll take stock options and story rights." Emotion tangled my tongue. I sipped air, then blurted, "Stay, please." His answering smile felt like dawn after endless storms. Week 4 post-fire, we hosted a press tour inside hangar to unveil our rebirth collection. Demand had ballooned. Waitlist reached December. Investors sniffed, but I was wary of venture vultures. Instead, Harper recommended a state-backed low-interest loan, a safer runway. During Quand A reporter asked, "What safeguards prevent future sabotage?" I highlighted new sprinkler system orders, digital oversight, employee whistleblower rewards. As I spoke, a hush-swept crowd, cameras pivoted. I turned to see father in wheelchair, pushed by mother. Tubes gone, hands still bandaged but eyes bright like molten amber. Tears blurred microphones as I rushed over. He grasped my wrist softly. "Couldn't miss the Renaissance," he croaked. I knelt, pressing forehead to his. Crowd melted away, time compressed. When we parted, he lifted tremulous hand to gesture at buzzing machinery. "You did what I couldn't, evolve without forgetting roots." I laughed through tears. "You taught me grain tells a story. I just added a new chapter." Cameras flashed, capturing our embrace, image that trended worldwide within hours, quelling residual skepticism. But every phoenix invites jealous eyes. That night, Fontaine forwarded a cease and desist from Oberlin Capital, a private equity firm claiming lien over Whitaker & Sons patents via debt purchase from Sharpstone. If true, they could blockade production until we paid exorbitant licensing fees. I convened emergency video call with board and legal team. Oberlin's claim rested on technicality, intellectual property vaulting clause triggered upon credit default 13 days ago. Our restructure clawed back assets, but paperwork lag gave Oberlin foothold. We had 72 hours to contest in Delaware Chancery Court or operations would grind to halt. My head throbbed. Another dragon. Harper suggested we leverage Accelerator's legal network. Genevieve prepped press packages emphasizing predatory finance preying on recovering communities. But courts judged law, not sentiment. We needed cash to settle lien or proof of improper debt assignment. Digging through Sharpstone's filings, Booker discovered irregular signatures. Tyndall again, forging CFO's name pre-fire. But chain of custody murky. Camden, still recovering, recalled Tyndall's brag about silver bullet in filing cabinet. Which cabinet, though? Plant's admin wing remained partially untouched. Late that night, Camden insisted he could guide me. Against medical advice, he donned back brace and we drove to Plant with Booker. Inside admin offices, moonlight filtered through broken windows. Camden limped to vault, combination he'd memorized as child pilfering candy from petty cash. Inside, we found folders, ledgers, and an unmarked USB drive taped beneath a false shelf. Booker's flashlight revealed Tyndall's scribbled note, "Insurance first, patents next, Oberlin seals deal." We pocketed drive, leaving before security patrol noticed. Back at hangar, Harper's tech team decrypted files. Emails between Tyndall and Oberlin exec Constance Hale, dated weeks before fire, outlining staged default to acquire patents at fraction of value. Smoking gun. With evidence, Fontaine drafted emergency injunction to bar Oberlin enforcement pending fraud investigation. We filed electronically at dawn. Court hearings set for next day. I hadn't slept more than catnaps in days. Yet adrenaline sustained a brittle equilibrium. Alex brewed not coffee but chamomile, forcing me to sip. "You need to slow enough for brain to run," he said. I exhaled. "If we survive this, I'll take a day off." He smirked. "I'll believe when I see." Courtroom in Wilmington radiated mahogany gravitas. Oberlin's counsel, sleek, perfumed, argued clause validity. Fontaine countered with conspiracy exhibits, forged signatures, collusion emails. Constance Hale sat expressionless, but flicker in her eyes betrayed nerves. Judge Krause, known for incisive questioning, grilled both sides. Key issue: was Sharpstone's debt sale and Oberlin's lien acquisition tainted by fraud? If yes, injunction would hold. During recess, I stood at courthouse balcony overlooking the Delaware River. Wind-whipped hair, stinging eyes. Father's voice haunted, "Grain tells a story." Every contract, like every plank, held growth rings marking seasons of pressure and release. We just had to reveal them. When session resumed, Judge Krause delivered decision. Preliminary injunction granted, discovery expedited, Oberlin barred from enforcing IP lien until fraud claims adjudicated. Applause erupted behind me. I exhaled a week's worth of dread. But celebrations soured when my phone buzzed with unknown number and a single grainy photo. Alex, unconscious, tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse dotted with furniture molds. Message beneath: call off crusade or lose what keeps you afloat. My blood iced. Unknown followed up with address coordinates near Savannah docks and 2-hour deadline. I sprinted from courtroom, Fontaine calling after. In stairwell, I dialed Agent Rivera voicemail. "Next, Genevieve," she answered breathless. "Alex missing. I just got text too." I told her about address. She swore softly. "I'll alert SWAT." "No time," I said, grabbing rental car keys. Heart hammered. I wouldn't risk another life lost to my war. As I sped toward airport for the quickest flight south, phone buzzed again. Another image. Alex's head slumped, a petrol can beside him, and countdown timer. 2 hours to save the person who saved me in the river. And 2 empires hung in balance, because if they killed him, the story of our resurrection might die with him. Him. That single pronoun pulsed in my skull as I barreled through Wilmington International's doors, heart throttling like a misfired piston. Him. Alex, the barista-turned-logistics mastermind, the man who had dragged me from River's jaws, stitched hope through sleepless nights, and woven resilience into our fractured workforce. If Oberlin's thugs harmed him, they wouldn't just break my heart, they'd snap the spine of everything we'd built. I sprinted to the first counter. Earliest flight to Savannah, 1 seat. The gate agent tapped keyboard, eyes widening at my disheveled, half-soaked appearance. "We have a puddle jumper leaving in 20 minutes. Last seat." "I'll take it." I slapped corporate Amex, hands shaking. Phone vibrated. Unknown number again. I steeled myself and opened message. A short video clip. Alex. Duct taped to chair. Gag gone. He looked into camera, fear eclipsed by determination. His muffled voice. "Cal, don't come alone. Trap." Video cut. Countdown timer resumed. 93 minutes. A trap. Of course. But I'd walk into Hades with blueprints if it meant pulling him out. The turboprop rattled over thunderheads like dice in a gambler's cup. I used turbulence as metronome to formulate plan. 1. Alert Rivera en route with drop pin. 2. Loop Genevieve and Booker for diversion. 3. Secure non-lethal weapon, warehouse tool maybe. 4. Extract Alex. 5. Destroy incriminating evidence kidnappers sought, perhaps the decrypted emails. My mind spun through contingencies faster than propeller blades. But every strategy hinged on time, a resource leaking with every air mile. At 11:42 a.m. we touched down. I dashed through terminal, ignoring disapproving glances. Rivera's voicemail again. So I left message, zipped audio of threats, coordinates. Texted Camden to mobilize Whitaker staff for remote eyes on docks, CCTV. He replied with thumbs up and prayer emoji. Outside taxi line, Genevieve idled in cargo van loaded with scrap lumber. Her idea. "We'll disguise entrance," she said. "Cops 5 minutes behind." She tossed me a walkie-talkie and a taser. "Non-lethal, you good?" I nodded. Booker, riding shotgun, handed me a hand plane, razor-sharp blade glinting. "If taser fails, cut truth from lies." I tried a half-smile. "Sawdust justice, huh?" The docklands smelled of brine and engine oil. Storm clouds bruised horizon. Abandoned warehouses lined canal like decaying teeth. Coordinates led to number 17. Rust-red corrugated metal. Windows papered with plywood. Genevieve swung van into adjacent loading bay and killed engine. We crouched behind crates, surveying. No guards visible, but black Escalade idled near main door. License plate obscured by mud. Classic Rent-A-Goon move. Walkie crackled. Camden's voice. "CCTV shows 2 armed men inside, plus lookout at mezzanine." "Alex location?" I whispered. "North interior quadrant. Office cage." Timer on phone. 31 minutes. Rivera still MIA. We couldn't wait. "Genevieve, create distraction at south door. Booker and I breach north window." She gripped my forearm. "Be careful, Masseur." We slipped through weeds to a cracked skylight. Booker boosted me. Pain flared in healing shoulder, but I gritted. Inside, warehouse was maze of shipping containers and molds for injection furniture. Echoes amplified each breath. I dropped onto catwalk, Booker following. Below, 2 men paced near floodlight-lit cage. Alex sat tied, blood on temple. My fury sharpened like chisel. I signaled Booker, 2 fingers for guards, horizontal, / for knockout. Sudden crash at south wall. Genevieve reversing van into roll-up door. Alarmed shouts. Guards ran toward noise, guns drawn. We descended metal ladder. Footsteps masked by echoing commotion. Starter pistol popped. Genevieve's blank rounds, drawing guards deeper. I reached cage, pried lock with plain blade. Alex's eyes widened with mixture of relief and warning. "It's wired," he croaked. I froze. Thin fishing line looped from Alex's ankle to small propane tank rigged with blasting caps. Classic booby trap. Move chair. Spark explosion. Booker hissed. "Needs snips." No time. I surveyed. Spool anchored to forklift. Idea formed. I whispered to Alex. "On my mark. Stay still." He nodded. I darted to forklift, hot-wired ignition, thanks to high school mischief. Reversed slowly, spooling slack on line until tension ceased. Using plane blade, I sawed line near chair leg. Heart hammering. One mistake, we'd be confetti. Guard's voice boomed across stacks. "They're decoys." Footsteps rushed back. "Cut!" Line severed. Booker hauled Alex free as I rammed forklift forward, pallet forks, smashing propane trap tipped toward empty aisle. Explosion blossomed behind, hurling fireball upward, momentarily blinding guards re-entering. We sprinted, coughing smoke, weaving through molds. Fire suppression sprinklers sputtered, uncertified as always. Flames spread. Near exit, Genevieve grappled with guard. She headbutted him, taser crackled. Second guard raised pistol at her back. I hurled the plane. Wooden handle clipped his gun hand. Shot went wide. Booker tackled him. Sirens wailed. Finally, law enforcement. We dragged Alex outside as SWAT vans screeched. Rivera emerged, fury flashing. "Why didn't you wait?" I gestured to Alex's bloodied face. "Clock's non-negotiable." She nodded, grudging respect, then oversaw cuffing goons while firefighters attacked flames. But victory soured when Constance Hale exited Escalade, hands raised, attorney at side. She smirked. "Attempted kidnapping? I was merely negotiating extension of lien. These contractors misunderstood." Rivera's jaw tightened. Without direct evidence linking Hale to coercion, charges might not stick. She was viper clever. Alex leaned on me. She showed me signed warrant to seize molds. Thought intimidation would force you to capitulate. Hale overheard, smile widening. Business is negotiation, dear. I stepped forward, rage ice sharp. You negotiated with a gun. She shrugged. Prove it. Rivera intervened. Enough. Miss Hale, you're coming downtown. But I knew high-priced lawyers would chisel her free by morning. Hospital again. Nurses patched Alex, marveled at our revolving door resilience. I collapsed into chair, adrenaline crash, leaving hollow ache. Camden video called, teary with relief. Father slept peacefully. Mother mouthed thank you across camera. For first time in days, I allowed myself a shower and 2 hours of dreamless sleep. Woke to Booker's text. Mill cleared for rebuild sooner. Inspectors satisfied. A win. Yet overshadowed by looming trial and Hale's machinations. I pored over discovery files with Fontaine. Email troves hinted deeper conspiracy. Oberlin sought not just Whitaker patents, but our salvage algorithms powering sustainable design. If they seized software, they'd dominate eco-furniture market. We needed fortress-level cybersecurity. Harper connected us with TechBridge coders who installed end-to-end encryption. Still, threat felt hydra-headed. Days blurred into nails-biting routine. Morning site visits, midday hospital check, night strategy huddles. Public sentiment rallied after kidnapping news leak. Donations doubled, yet creditors still watched like hawks. To cement confidence, we planned a live-streamed soft-opening gala inside refurbished mill, targeted for 2 weeks. Ambitious, borderline insane, but drama captured hearts and investors' wallets. We assembled volunteer crews. Under skylights, new hybrid CNC and handcraft workflow hummed. Father, out of ICU but wheelchair-bound, visited, tears glittering as he blessed first finished piece, a writing desk dedicated to Alex's heroism. Alex, leg still bandaged, had taken up design software, drafting lattice patterns inspired by river turbulence. Watching him lean over tablet, brow furrowed, stirred warmth. I tried naming but left uncatalogued. Too fragile, until storms calmed. Lance. On eve of gala, Fontaine received notice. Federal grand jury indicted Tyndall on multiple counts. Trial date set months ahead, freeing us from immediate sabotage. But Hale remained unindicted. Resources vast. Harper suggested we convert Rowan and Root into Public Benefit Corporation, PBC, ensuring mission lock against hostile takeovers. Board approved unanimously. Paperwork filed. Gala day dawned clear. We strung Edison bulbs among repurposed rafters. Musicians tuned cellos near loading dock stage. Guests in linen suits mingled with artisans in denim aprons. The air smelled of fresh varnish and triumph. As sunset painted windows amber, I ascended stage. Heart hammered, not from fear but from magnitude. I spoke of lineage, loss, resurrection. Guests applauded. Some wiped tears. Father rolled forward. Proud, he whispered into microphone, voice gravel but strong. Then Alex joined, unveiling new lattice chair, the resurgence. Crowd gasped at fluid silhouette, metal lattice echoing river flow. Hotel buyers pledged orders on spot. Champagne corks popped. Genevieve toasted in French. Booker dabbed eyes with bandana. I allowed shoulders to drop for the first time since dinner table dethroning. We did it. Fireworks cracked outside, courtesy of Downtown Festival, but applause drowned them. Suddenly, auditorium lights flickered, screens behind stage glitching. A logo flashed. Oberlin Capital Acquisitions. Access granted. Data streams scrolled. Our patents, orders, financial ledgers, projected for all to see, then overlaid by single sentence. The empire falls at midnight. Gasps erupted. I rushed to backstage server rack. TechBridge engineers frantic. Someone breached fiber line, they said. Encrypted with quantum hashbuster. We're locked out. Rivera, attending as guest, grabbed phone, barking to cybercrime unit. Timer appeared on screens. 0 hours, 12 minutes, and 0 seconds and counting down. Guests panicked, stamping toward exits. Machines on floor shut down as ransomware infected controllers. Without power, kiln vents stalled. Paint vapors built pressure. Risk of explosion. I seized Mike. Everyone evacuate calmly via east doors. Workers guided crowd out. Harper pulled me aside. If ransomware encrypts CAD files and machine firmware, production stops for months. Booker cursed. And vapors ignite if ventilators offline long. Alex limped to server. We can manually override vents from sub-basement. I clenched fists. I'll go. He shook head. You handle crowd. I know circuitry. Genevieve and I descend. I hesitated, remembering river plunge, but his eyes held steel. I nodded, handing flashlight. Timer at 9:45. Harper coordinated evacuation. Rivera set perimeter. I ran to machine floor, cutting main breaker to reduce spark risk. Emergency lights flickered red, painting mill like beating heart. Screams echoed as smaller explosion popped in paint room. Compressor relief valve bursting. Flames licked doorframe. Sprinklers engaged, but water lines sputtered. Ransomware had disabled pump. I grabbed fire hose, manual valve. Water gushed, dousing flames. Smoke billowed, stinging eyes. Timer broadcast tapped 6:30. Genevieve radioed from sub-basement. Vent override jammed. Bolts rusted. Alex's voice strained in background. Need hydraulic wrench. I sprinted to workshop, grabbed power wrench and descended spiral stairs into heat-heavy gloom. The sub-basement smelled of paint thinner and old machinery oil. I found them wrestling steel wheel. Alex's face slick with sweat, wound reopened bleeding. I fit wrench, braced, and together we heaved. Wheel screamed, then turned. Fans roared overhead, pulling fumes up. But ransomware still threatened production. Timer 3:12. Tech bridge engineer radioed. We found server closet at dock where breach originated. Port 443 open. Must physically sever to cut worm and restore backups. Quote. Location coordinates. Far end of building behind storage mezzanine. Flame zone. I dashed, breath ragged, through smoke-hazy corridors. Floor slick with water, sparks cascading from cable trays. Reaching dock, I saw network cabinet glowing ominous red. A laptop perched open. Quantum hash-cracking rig humming. And there stood Constance Hale, business suit swapped for cargo pants. Cable in hand. Realization hit. She orchestrated hack personally. She turned, cool smile. Midnight -2 minutes. Care to watch Empire die? I raised wrench. Step away. She drew compact pistol. Drop it. Adrenaline spiked. With time ticking, negotiation pointless. I feigned dropping wrench, but instead hurled it at light fixture above her. Glass shattered, showering sparks. She flinched. I lunged, tackling her. Gun skittered. We grappled, fists thudding. She fought viciously, nails ripping my cheek. Timer 1:15. I clawed toward laptop. She wrapped arm around throat, choking. Vision tunneled. But memory of father's charred hands fueled surge. I slammed elbow into her ribs, rolled free, snatched pistol, and fired into server rack's power supply. Sparks erupted, monitors died, timer blinked off. Hale screamed, lunging, but I leveled gun. It's over. Police burst in, Rivera leading. Hale cuffed, protests drowned by cooling fans rebooting into safe mode. Engineer radioed. Backups restoring. We're clean. I sank to floor, lungs ablaze, tears, smoke or emotion, streaming. Dawn bled pale lavender when the mill's power fully restored. Damage contained to one quadrant. Gala guests safe. Data secure. Workers returned to salvage event, serving breakfast pastries amid ash smell. Perfectly on-brand resilience. Press hailed me hero. Investors doubled pledges. But I felt hollow, haunted by violence lines crossed. Alex found me on rooftop, sunrise warming bruised skin. He brought coffee, of course. He placed mug in my shaking hand. Empire saved. Again. I managed half smile. At what cost? How many near deaths until destiny quits testing us? He brushed blood-dried curl from my face. Legends aren't born, they're tempered. Words lingered between us. Electric. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Voicemail from hospital. Father's condition deteriorated overnight. Cardiac arrhythmia returned. Doctors preparing emergency surgery. Ice-flooded veins. I turned to Alex, tears welling. I can't lose him. He clasped my shoulders. Then let's not. Quote. We raced downstairs, Camelot in chaos behind, hearts tethered to hospital monitors miles away, unknown if next beat would come. Cliffhanger moments soared again, and this time I wasn't sure which empire, family, or business would demand the ultimate sacrifice. The ambulance sirens whirred like electric banshees as we tore through Savannah's pre-dawn haze, Alex gripping the overhead bar with one hand, my free hand curled around Father's wedding ring, strung on a makeshift cord around my neck. The ring felt impossibly heavy, both anchor and promise, as if every ounce of Whitaker legacy condensed into that single band. My brain raced through the events of the last 24 hours. Constance Hale's face lit by server sparks. The mill fans roaring back to life. Employees guiding gala guests to safety. The stuttering phone call informing me that Father's heart had begun to fail again. Life, I realized, rarely offered tidy climaxes. Triumph one moment, terror the next. Victory threaded through the eye of catastrophe. The siren's wail crescendoed, matching the frantic drum of my pulse. For the first time since my brother's coronation dinner, I feared we might finally encounter a challenge that no blend of grit, reclaimed lumber, and righteous fury could solve. Hospital corridors blurred into familiar topography, like grain along a maple plank, each knot a memory carved by trauma and triumph. Mother stood outside the cardiac theater, rosary beads clutched, whispering devotions. Camden, still in brace, paced with coordinated limp, muttering figures about supply chain to distract himself. Only when he caught sight of me did his facade crack. He enveloped me in a one-armed hug, apology and gratitude coiled in the tremor of his muscles. Alex hovered back, leaning on crutches, eyes never leaving mine. He wore last night's smoke-stained dress shirt. The bandage on his calf seeped a bloom of red through gauze. Despite that, he offered a quiet nod, silent reassurance that he was still here, still willing to wade into fire and flood for our impossible dream. I squeezed his hand once, then squared my shoulders and strode toward the surgical prep desk. A cardiologist in blue scrubs intercepted me. Ms. Whitaker, your father is prepped for a quadruple bypass with mitral valve repair. His burns complicate matters. Skin graft sites near sternum. We need your consent as POA. I initialed forms, voice unnervingly steady. What are his odds? Quote, his will to survive is extraordinary, the surgeon hedged, but the procedure is high risk given trauma. Then you'll match his will with skill, I replied, surprising us both by the steel in my tone. He inclined his head and disappeared through double doors. We settled into the waiting room. The clock hands jerked in staccato while monitors beeped behind those sterile walls. Camden dozed, head lolling. Mother and I prayed in our own ways. She with whispered Hail Marys, me scribbling contingency plans on a legal pad. Alex eventually dozed, leaning against my shoulder, the weight of him strangely comforting. 2 hours bled into 3, then 5. The surgeon finally emerged, mask dangling, eyes tired but gleaming. Surgery successful. He's on bypass support, but vitals stable. Next 48 hours remain critical. Visit briefly, but be mindful. Mother wept into the surgeon's shoulder. Camden exhaled like a tire losing pressure. I locked eyes with Alex, and for one luminous second relief, eclipsed exhaustion. Father's ICU room resembled the cockpit of a spaceship. Monitors, lines, tubes, machines pumping and beeping. Yet despite the tangle of technology, I could see him. His chest rose and fell in measured cadence. The relentless spirit that once carved dovetail joints with surgical precision beat beneath those bandages. I leaned in. The Phoenix flew, Dad. The mill stands. But we need you to see it with your own eyes. I placed his ring on the bedside table where he could see it first thing, then retreated before emotion drowned me. Back at the mill later that afternoon, crews scrubbed soot from the new paint line. The ransomware attack had left code scars, but no permanent damage. JT, our TechBridge lead, announced that backups had restored 99% of data. The remaining 1% we'd remodel manually. Genevieve, unstoppable in an ivory jumpsuit despite 3 nights without sleep, oversaw shipments bound for DuPont Hospitality's Chicago expansion. The order quantity had doubled overnight, spurred by media coverage of our resilience. Still, we stood on a knife's edge. Cash flow tight, Oberlin's appeal pending, Constance's bail hearing approaching. Fontaine warned. We won the skirmish, not the war. Hale's lawyers petitioned for dismissal, citing, quote, illegal vigilante act against server hardware. I sighed. Let them come. Truth's harder to kill than patents. Quote, Harper, present via hologram display, accelerator perks, presented a path forward, a regulation, a crowdfunding round to convert supporters into micro-investors. Your story sells itself, she said. Convert narrative into equity. Let community own a slice. Community had moved mountains already. Asking them to underwrite future growth felt both audacious and right. The board greenlit the campaign. That night, after workers clocked out and moonlight slanted across skylights, I retreated to Design Loft. Alex limped up the iron stairs carrying 2 steaming mugs. Chamomile, he said, doctor's orders. He sat beside me on wide bench carved from splintered pallets. The hush of Idle's CNC routers echoed like distant surf. We sipped in companionable silence until the weight of unspoken things grew too heavy. I almost lost you, I murmured, voice barely audible. His crooked smile wavered. Ditto. He traced the bruise along my cheek. When you flung that wrench at Hale, I thought I'd marry you on the spot. Heat flared. Not embarrassment, but something richer, deep as walnut heartwood. I set mug down, turned fully to him. Family company. Fights. I kept prioritizing them over how I feel. Breath hitched. But you keep risking yourself for this dream. My dream. And I don't want to pretend your life is just another asset. He cupped my jaw. I'm here because you saw value in more than salvage. You transform ruin into purpose, including people. Words converged in my throat, unsure if confession or proposal. The decision landed like a clean dovetail. Interlocking, inevitable. I leaned forward, kissed him, gentle at first, then with all the wonder we'd deferred. Somewhere below, security patrolled oblivious. Above, the moon pooled silver across our entangled shadows. When we parted, he rested forehead to mine. We'll carve a life as solid as white oak. Deal? Deal. Morning delivered a mixed blessing. Father awake, ex-debated, whispering requests for his drafting pencils. And simultaneously, an email blast from Constance's PR machine spinning the gala attack as a, quote, tragic misunderstanding triggered by faulty mill wiring. She threatened a defamation suit alleging we'd staged the kidnapping for publicity. Twitter war erupted. #ConArtist trended. Yet lawyers cautioned, public opinion sway cannot supplant due process. Fontaine assembled affidavits, digital forensics, police testimony. Hearing set 1 week out. Enough time to build ironclad narrative, or enough rope for Constance to hang us? Unknown. Meanwhile, the Regulation A campaign launched. Within hours, we surpassed first milestone, $1 million in commitments. Comments section overflowed with messages from veterans groups, honoring Booker, single moms, inspired by my fight for equality, and climate activists, cheering sustainable upcycling. I wept reading them. George State Fairgrounds hosted the next big test. DuPont Hospitality unveiled their Rebirth collection to potential franchise buyers in a public showcase. Alex, Camden, and I traveled together, our first united front. Camden, humbled by injuries and guilt, had embraced operations oversight, freeing me to focus on vision. At Fairground Hall, Constance's shadow loomed. Her recent acquisition of a rival eco-brand exhibited across aisle. She approached, flanked by lawyers despite restraining order perimeter. Cute chairs, she sneered. Enjoy them while you can. I met her gaze. They'll be around long after your shell companies collapse. She laughed. So certain. Litigation is water torture, Ms. Whitaker. Drip, drip. Investors flee. Cash flow clogs. Ideals rot. Camden bristled, but I touched his arm. Go manage staff, I said. I'll handle rot. As show opened, our booth thrummed with foot traffic. Guests ran hands over live-edge walnut tops, scanned QR tags, linking to each piece's rescue story. What barn, what hurricane, what family-donated beams. Some wept. Purchases soared. Over loudspeaker, host announced Innovation Awards. Runner-up, Constance's subsidiary. Grand prize, Rowan and Root. Crowd erupted. Constance's face mottled red. She stormed out. But triumph again jarred into crisis. My phone buzzed with unknown number. Prison operator. Inmate Lawrence Tyndall requested call. Against better judgment, I accepted. His voice faint but smug. Thought you should know. Oberlin's appealing injunction with Supreme Court. They'll fast-track if they prove your crowd raise violates securities. I said nothing. He coughed. Also, Constance moves assets offshore tonight. She'll disappear before hearing. You want her nailed? Dig into Port 58 Manifest, container 31,124. Why tell me? Because Hale hung me to dry. Bring her down. Maybe prosecution grants leniency. I ended call, forwarded tip to Rivera. She responded instantly. Paxo on it. Port 58 at dusk. Rivera led Homeland officers in raid. We watched from perimeter as they cracked open container 31,124. Inside, servers, forged patents, and box after box of digital counterfeit furniture tags. Proof of global laundering scheme. Constance attempted escape via charter jet but was intercepted. Charges multiplied. Industrial espionage, international trafficking, racketeering. Media exploded. Stock of Oberlin's parent company plummeted. By sunrise, regulators suspended Oberlin's license pending investigation. Supreme Court declined emergency appeal citing ongoing criminal probe. Fontaine called me, voice exultant. It's done. I sagged against Alex, crying laughter and relief. Delinqueu. 1 month later, Spencer Square buzzed with cameras as father, cane in hand, cut ribbon across Mill's new showroom wing. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling panes, catching dust motes that looked like sparks. Always sparks with us. Apprentices demonstrated dovetail joints. Camden guided investors on AR headsets. Mother coordinated museum proposals for old Whitaker heirlooms. I stepped to podium. We stand where ashes once smoldered, I began. Our story proves that heritage and innovation don't compete. They collaborate. I announced scholarship programs, carbon-negative goals, profit share for employees turned micro-investors. Applause thundered. I turned to father. His eyes glistened, pride radiating. When crowd dispersed, he pulled me aside. I was blind, Callista, saw lineage as baton to pass to oldest son, not brightest spirit. Tears blurred my vision. We both grew. He nodded, placing ring in my palm. Your empire now. I slid ring onto necklace chain beside Alex's makeshift cord. Legacies, intertwining. That evening we hosted friends and workers at River Cottage, the site of our near immolation. Fireflies blinked among cypress, lanterns flickered. Booker recited toast. To ashes that fertilize forests, laughter followed. Alex pulled me to riverbank away from revelry, moon-embroidered water in silver. He produced small wooden box carved from leftover renegade chair slats. Inside, a ring forged from intertwined walnut and recycled silver. Grain tells a story, he said, breath shaky. Let's write ours. Tears slipped free. I answered, not with words, but by sliding ring onto finger and kissing him under cypress canopy while fireflies performed their eternal encore. Weeks passed without catastrophe, a novelty. Regulation A closed at $10 million, oversubscribed. Workers received bonuses. Pre-orders scheduled into next spring. The mill installed solar array funded by state grant. The world, for once, turned with gentle hum rather than grinding gears. On a crisp October dawn, I stood on mezzanine overlooking production floor. Machines buzzed in symphony, sawdust drifting like gold confetti. Alex delivered latte foam-etched, With our initial R intertwined with W, Camden updated me on European partnership opportunities. Father, now honorary chairman, sketched prototypes for limited edition line Phoenix series. I inhaled cedar, walnut possibility. The empire we'd forged shimmered, tempered by fire, river, and betrayal, yet unbowed. Just as I was about to descend to meeting, Booker approached, iPad in hand. You might want to see this. Headline: International Furniture Expo votes Rowan and Root and Whitaker & Sons joint venture as lead keynote for Paris next quarter. Paris. Dream bigger, Callista, I grinned. Book flights. Let's show Europe what reclaimed American grit looks like. That night, as moon rose, I journaled on loft balcony. When father chose my brother for the business, I thought destiny had discarded me. But destiny waits for no one. You reclaim it, plank by plank, choice by choice. If empire is built, not inherited, then may ours inspire generations to rescue their own futures from the scrap heap. I closed notebook, hugged storm-scarred skies with fresh gratitude. Below, CNC router carved prototypes for Paris showcase. Above, constellations traced ancestral blueprints. Somewhere in between, our story exhaled, but never ended. Because tomorrow, new grain would offer new tales, and every cut we made would echo, shaping chapters yet unwritten. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.